A defensive masterpiece last week, rejuvenating the Steelers fan base. This week, Pittsburgh heads to LA for a primetime matchup once again. On today's show, how Jalen Ramsey's flip to safety flipped this defense's performance, how Tuesday's trade deadline will impact the matchup, plus the Super Bowl 40 team coming back together for a family reunion. We've got all that and more as we kick off another episode of Black and Gold Today.
Last week you guys would be buyers at the trade deadline. You already bought one in Kyle Dugger. Do you anticipate shopping around a little bit more before 4 o'clock?
We'll see what happens. I like shopping.
Well, maybe shopping for a win. The Steelers stayed quiet this week at the trade deadline, but Pittsburgh is in a much sunnier place this week than they were just 7 days ago. Welcome inside Black and Gold Today. Ryan, a quiet trade deadline for a busy Omar Khan, who made this team better, though, last week. True or false?
I'm going to say true. The Steelers' deadline deal was last week's trade for safety Kyle Dugger. It came in on a Tuesday, and it was unknown what kind of role that he would play, or if he would even play in the game. One way that the Steelers were able to make it easier on Dugger was pairing him with Jalen Ramsey at safety, and the pairing paid off. Last week against the NFL's top-scoring offense, the Steelers had 6 turnovers and 5 sacks. Dugger played 77 of 78 snaps, recording 4 tackles, and helped keep Colts tight end Tyler Warren in check. Now, that's not bad for a guy that's only been with the team for 72 hours.
Did you do or not do anything to try to ease Dugger's transition into playing so much schematically for your defense?
It's only so much you can do. He's deserving of a lot of credit, and that's why I mentioned him directly after the game. There's only so much you can do. He absorbed a lot of defense in a short period of time and displayed knowledge and understanding.
The Steelers plan to put Dugger and Ramsey back out at safety this week. Riley Holsinger here in studio. Riley, from his role on the field helping Dugger to the inspiring pregame pep talk he gave this team last week, Jalen Ramsey is kind of the storyline from this defense a week ago.
Absolutely, Andrew. This team needed somebody to play safety, especially with Deshaun Elliott on injured reserve and with the team missing Jabril Peppers and Chuck Clark. And not only did Ramsey play there, he set the tone. His message to the team last weekend was that he wanted them to play with some edge, and he led the charge by playing a position that he's largely not used to. Now, Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin really liked what he saw from Ramsey during that win against the Colts, that he decided to have the Florida State product work exclusively at safety during practice this week. Tomlin also talked about some of those traits that make Ramsey a perfect fit for that spot.
He's got really good instincts. He's got really good passion for the game. He studies the game, and I think those are some things that really enable him to play back there, and that's such a major component of that position. His talents are obvious, his tackling, his range, his physicality. But the more subtle things, the intangible things, I think are the things that are exciting for us. Because as he gains more experience back there, it's reasonable to expect some of those talents to show up more frequently.
With Ramsey moving to safety, Tomlin added that it's going to open up more opportunities at corner for James Pierre and Brandon Echols, who's been like Jalen Ramsey light with being able to move from outside corner to the slot.
Riley, it's certainly not unheard of for great cornerbacks to age into safety. Any chance we're seeing the early stages of that?
Maybe the best example of that is Charles Woodson, and funny enough, Andrew, that's a guy that Ramsey has spoke about in the past by trying to emulate his game after him. Ramsey is known to be a great ball hawk and a willing tackler. Those are 2 key traits that can make a move back there work for a corner, even if you lose some speed later in your career.
He's Riley Holsinger. He'll be back with Properly Rated later in the show, something new we cooked up this week. Thanks, Riley. Well, other secondary changes this week. Pittsburgh released Beanie Bishop from the practice squad. Bishop played all 17 games last season and started a few, recording 4 interceptions, but Bishop has not made it off the practice squad this fall. Tomlin was asked this week about the move, and He said, quote, "That's too far down the totem pole." I guess there's no love lost there.
One player Pittsburgh did add this week is wide receiver Marquez Valdes-Scantling. He worked out for the team last week. MVS was with the 49ers earlier in the season, appearing in 5 games. MVS was a 2018 fifth-round pick of the Packers and posted a 4 really good and productive years with Aaron Rodgers, who he rejoined in Pittsburgh.
On the LA side of the trade deadline, the Chargers added Trevor Penning, hoping to plug a gaping hole on the offensive line. It is pretty bad, Ryan, right now in this Chargers line. Rashawn Slater, he's out. Joe Alt, he's out. Bobby Hart, who is starting in place of Slater, was injured last week. He's questionable, as is guard Mekhi Becton. Penning will be tasked with helping ease some of that burden, though he is generally regarded as a first-round bust and moved to guard this season for the Saints. But the Chargers needed warm bodies. They've been without Rashawn Slater all season long and lost again Joe Alt last week in the game against Tennessee. Penning has 29 career starts.
Obviously tough to replace 2 of those guys, but I think the guys that have stepped up have done a great job. I think Pip and Jamari and Deck, and when they've been thrown out there, they've done a great job battling and fighting, and we got to find a way. We got to get it done for those guys, and I know Rashawn and Joe would do anything to be back out there. So we got to hold it down for them and make sure that we're giving our best.
You really have to wonder if Los Angeles can protect Justin Herbert.
Yeah, he's been hit the most among NFL QBs this season, and the Steelers are coming off a 5-sack performance.
Let's talk more about that after the break, but first, you know what time it is. No, not black and yellow. Trivia time. I'm not letting Riley answer this one this week. In 2019, the Steelers were down to their 3rd-string quarterback, Duck Hodges, who made his first starts in a soccer stadium in LA. The Steelers had a passing, rushing, and defensive touchdown. Which defensive player found pay dirt in the 24-17 win? We'll have that answer later in the show.
Here we go. Back again, same scenario. Win, 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 win. Yeah, we on a roll. Yeah, 2, 4, 6. We like 10-0.
My dad been in my ear all week about his boys coming in town, and he said, "You got to make your dad proud." So I'm glad I got that pick for him and did what I did. Shout out to all my uncles that came today.
Joey Porter Jr. last week talking about his dad in attendance for the team's game against the Indianapolis Colts. On Sunday, Pittsburgh welcomed back the Super Bowl 40 team, who is celebrating 20 years since that 21-10 win in Detroit.
That team met with reporters in the locker room before the game and was later honored at halftime. A number of those players have gold jackets. A couple more are up for the Hall of Fame this year. Guys like James Harrison, Hines Ward, and Marquise Pouncey advanced in the voting last month. Alan Faneca, the most recent Steeler enshrined in Canton, threw his support behind the trio last weekend, adding that he loves reuniting with his former teammates.
The brotherhood, man, just the fellowship, what we've been doing this weekend. Somebody asked if it's kind of like a high school reunion, and, it's really more like going home for Christmas, going home to see family.
Well, Pittsburgh's win last week, Ryan, certainly reinvigorated this franchise, and the Steelers' playoff chances are certainly much better now at 5-3 than 4-4.
Yeah, historically speaking, the difference between making the playoffs between those 2 records is about 35%. Now that's quite a big difference. The Steelers control their own destiny, but they still have a big hill to climb to make sure that they get into the playoffs and possibly win the AFC North.
If the season ended today, Pittsburgh would be in a 4 seed in the AFC, though Las Vegas still likes the Ravens as the betting favorite to win the division. That could make it difficult for Pittsburgh to get in if they can't win the division. The wild card is a pretty full room. You don't even see on there the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, that makes it all the more important that they win the division and secure a home playoff game. It's a tight playoff picture, and the Steelers' path is not an easy one. The month of November is a brutal one for Pittsburgh as they play 3 more teams with a winning record, plus they have the Joe Flacco-led Bengals. And remember, he just torched Pittsburgh in their meeting earlier this season.
Well, like last week, a lot hangs on Sunday's game. The Chargers are a 3-point favorite at home. Justin Herbert continues being one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. He's second in passing yards and touchdowns, but he's first in hits, not giving them. He has taken the 3rd most sacks. That banged-up offensive line certainly adds a challenge, but Cam Hayward this week made it abundantly clear just how much Pittsburgh still respects this Chargers offense.
When you're playing a guy like that, you can't simply just play 1 or 2 coverages and try to hold up. You got to mix things up. And, you got to get him off his target quick because he's got a lot of options. Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston, Ladd McConkey. There's a lot of pass catchers out there that can do it.
Elsewhere in the AFC North, the Bengals are on a bye while the Ravens look to win their third game in a row as they take on the Vikings. The Browns have a very favorable matchup as they face the one-win Jets.
I don't know who that's more favorable for. Well, let's head to break. We've got a new game later in the show. It's called Properly Stated. That's coming up.
But first, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's Brian Backo is one-on-one with Riley when we return.
Scenario. Win, 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 win. Yeah, we on a roll. Yeah, 2, 4, 6. We like 10-0.
Welcome back into Black and Gold today. We are now joined by good friend of the program here in Brian Backo from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Brian, it was a banner day for the Steelers defense on Sunday against Indianapolis. How did the Steelers build off of that momentum against the Colts and continue it into this matchup against the Chargers?
Got to keep getting pressure. I mean, you have to keep getting after the quarterback. That's easier said than done with Justin Herbert on the other side because, I mean, with Herbert, I know Daniel Jones is mobile too, but I feel like Herbert's first step, I mean, there's always that possibility that he escapes the pocket, gets going, those long strides, and he makes you look silly. So Steelers managed to limit that from Daniel Jones, and they took the ball away from him. So I think Justin Herbert is a better player than Daniel Jones, and that's always going to be the challenge of facing the Chargers offense. He elevates everybody around him, but Riley, they are dealing with a ton of injuries on the O-line, specifically at the tackle spots. So it could be another banner day for TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, and company.
You talked about some of the weapons that Justin Herbert has with Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, Gadsden, the rookie tight end from Syracuse there. Are you a little concerned for the secondary and how they're going to match up against these weapons from the Chargers?
Yeah, I think that's still very much the concern with this defense because it was one good performance while they were leaking oil from those previous 2 games. But you still, I think, you're not entirely sure. Darius Slay, I mean, can he still keep up with guys? Kyle Duggar, it was one good game, but, we need to see more from him. There's a reason why the Patriots chose to go in a different direction. So, yeah, I mean, even if it's, again, Jalen Ramsey at safety, which Mike Tomlin said it will be, it means you're seeing a lot more Brandon Echols at slot corner. So that's an area that the Chargers could exploit, especially because Ladd McConkey is one of the best slot receivers in the NFL. And Oronde Gadsden II, their rookie tight end, is, he's basically another receiver out there. We've seen what Keenan Allen can do against the Steelers, many years ago when he was a much younger guy. But yeah, Justin Herbert's got some really good pass catchers to throw to, and this Steelers secondary still has a lot to prove in my mind.
Did you like what you saw from Jalen Ramsey at safety against Indianapolis? And is this a logical move for him for later in his career to do something kind of like how Charles Woodson did?
Yeah, I think so. And I think even going back to his days at Florida State when he was coming out of the draft, he was on a lot of big boards from the draft gurus as a safety. And I think there were times early in his career, Jacksonville, where he said that, he'd be open to doing that at some point down the line. He became so settled into that role as a true shutdown corner and was arguably the best in the NFL at it for a while there. So, there's no real identity crisis when you're playing that well in one specific spot. But yeah, this has been an interesting turn of events for him. And I think for the Steelers, I mean, it's basically upgrading Minkah Fitzpatrick now at the same position. And I think you got probably a better player than Minkah and someone who's a little bit more versatile, or at least a little bit more willing to move around than Minkah was at that spot.
You bring up Jacksonville, the old home for Jalen Ramsey there. It's now the new home for one of the Steelers' trade targets ahead of the deadline, and Jakobi Meyers. Should the Steelers have pursued or made that trade to try and bring in Jakobi Meyers?
Well, I think they pursued that, or at least similar opportunities. As far as whether they should have actually gotten it done, I mean, I look at it from Omar Khan's perspective as this. I mean, I think they were willing and open to making a move like that to try to improve the team, but they had a pretty set price in mind that they didn't want to exceed. And you might say that it was a very paltry price when you look at the Jags trading a 4th and a 6th for Myers, or the Seahawks trading a 4th and 5th for Rashid Shaheed. And let's be honest, it's not like the Steelers are going to draft 12 guys next year, but you never know what you might want to package to move up, not even just for a quarterback, but maybe in other rounds too. And the fact that they didn't even want to meet those asking prices for those receivers tells me that they're at least somewhat comfortable and confident in their own guys, at least more so than a lot of us in the outside world.
Brian Batko from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette joining us here on Black and Gold today. Brian, before we let you go, we need a score prediction from you, man.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take the Chargers in this one. I mean, Justin Herbert, I think the Steelers have had issues with him over the years, and last season notwithstanding, but he was far from 100% dealing with that ankle sprain. I think it's going to be another entertaining Steelers-Chargers game. There's been a lot of those over the years, Riley. I'll go Chargers 27, Steelers 26.
All right, he's Brian Batko, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Thanks so much for joining us, Brian, and we'll have more coverage coming up here on Black and Gold today.
Stay up to date with the Steelers all season long on these great Black and Gold Nation stations.
Here we go. Back again, same scenario. Win, 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 win. Yeah, we on a roll. Yeah, 2, 4, 6. We like 10-0.
Well, let's play a new game here. Properly stated. Pretty easy concept. I'm going to give Riley, or the contestant, I'll be Monty Hall, you be the contestant. I'm going to give him 4 phrases, 4 headlines. He's going to tell me whether they're overstated, understated, or properly stated. Let's check out this first headline for you, Riley. The Steelers defense is officially back.
I'm going to go with overstated here. The Steelers are still giving up the 3rd most yards per game. It hasn't been pretty for that unit all season. I'm not ready to hand them an apology just yet, but I could be closer to that point if they have a good performance against Justin Herbert, as well as the talented pass catchers that he has.
I think all the yards this team gave up last week has gone very overlooked. They still gave up a lot to Indianapolis. Okay, let's check out our second one. Aaron Rodgers' MVP candidacy is still alive and well.
I'm going to go overstated. A couple weeks ago, I was more on board with maybe Aaron Rodgers being in that discussion with how well he was playing compared to some of his former MVP seasons that he had. But he's kind of fell down the totem pole here, and my pick to win the MVP, Andrew, is going to be Matt Stafford. A low-key one. Yeah.
I think this has been overstated all season long. Let's take a look at our third headline. We kind of talked about this one a little earlier. Jalen Ramsey will never be a primary corner again. He's going to live at safety the rest of his career.
Overstated once again here, Andrew. I think he will return to corner in a couple weeks here for the Steelers whenever Deshaun Elliott does return from his injury. But Ramsey, you're going to see him play all over the place like how you have been earlier this year.
I think it's more likely give this another year.
Yeah, of course.
But I could also see a scenario where Deshaun Elliott and Ramsey kind of play a third safety kind of nickel position, and they kind of shift into like a 4-2-5 kind of feel.
Yeah.
Because I think your 3 safeties are probably your 3 best defensive backs on this team. Okay, last topic. The Steelers will win the AFC North.
I'm going to say properly stated on this one, Andrew. I think Baltimore has a tough test this week against Minnesota. That will not be an easy game for the Ravens. I could easily see them losing it. And it's pretty much like the Ravens have to win out if they probably want to win the AFC North, because right now they're another team that isn't in that picture for a playoff spot, as well as a team like the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, the AFC is just loaded this year that it's not going to be easy to get a wild card spot. You got to win your division. I think the Steelers are going to be able to do that.
The Steelers helped themselves out a lot with last week's win. Okay, let's head to break. When we return, we're going to wrap up our show with our final thoughts. You're watching Black and Gold today.
Here we go. Back again, same scenario. Win, 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 win. Yeah, we on a roll. Yeah, 2, 4, 6. We like 10-0.
Well, today's trivia question: which defensive player scored a touchdown in Pittsburgh's 24-17 win in Los Angeles back in 2019? I know Riley knows this answer, so I'm only going exclusively to Ryan over here.
Well, I actually remember watching this game, and I was more amazed at how the Steelers fans took over that soccer stadium. It was Devin Bush. I mean, it felt like it was like maybe 90% Steelers fans there.
Yes, it was. It was Devin Bush in that game as Duck Hodges threw a touchdown, and the team also ran one in. Of course, the Steelers getting ready to play here coming up on Sunday Night Football. against the Los Angeles Chargers. Ryan, what are your final thoughts, and give me a prediction for this matchup?
Yeah, the Steelers have been terrible in primetime this year and when they've been nationally televised. I think it'll be close because I think Justin Herbert's going to be able to get the win for the Chargers.
And Riley?
Give me the Steelers in this one. The offensive line isn't there for the Chargers. I expect TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Nick Herbig, as well as Keanu Benton and Cam Hayward to feast on this line.
I agree with that, but if the Chargers can commit to just getting the ball out of Herbert's hands, I think we've seen that beat the Steelers.
We saw that happen with Joe Flacco and the Bengals.
Again. Well, that'll do it here on Black and Gold today. For Ryan Riskey and Riley Holsinger, I'm Andrew Clay. Thanks for watching.